The frost moon of Kelvar 9 cast pale light through the cave entrance, illuminating the trembling forms huddled against the stone wall. Kara counted them again. 7 cubs, their crystalline fur matted with ice and fear. The youngest, Tern, whimpered as another gust of wind screamed through the mountains. "Hush now," Kara whispered, though she knew they couldn't understand her words. The translator lodged in her throat had shattered when her ship crashed 3 days ago, along with most of her supplies and any hope of immediate rescue. The Kelvin cubs stared at her with eyes like fractured diamonds, each one reflecting a different color of distress. Their parent, the massive creature Kara had found dying in the snow, had used its last breath to push the human toward this den. A plea, a command, a desperate trust that defied every xenobiological report Kara had ever read about the species. Kelvins were apex predators. They were supposed to be territorial, aggressive, and utterly hostile to outsiders. Yet the mother's final act had been one of pure maternal instinct, transcending species and survival to beg for the impossible. That this alien, this human, would protect her children. Kara ran her thermal scanner over the cubs again. Their body temperatures were dropping. Without intervention, they had hours at best. The den provided shelter from the worst of the storm, but it wasn't enough. The cubs needed warmth, real warmth, and they needed it now. She looked down at her emergency pack. 1 thermal generator remained, its charge indicator showing 87%. Enough to heat the small den for perhaps 12 hours. But the storm outside showed no signs of breaking, and her own body temperature was already reading lower than recommended. Tern crawled toward her, his movements weak and uncoordinated. The cub's smaller size made him most vulnerable to the cold, and his siblings had unconsciously pushed him to the outer edge of their huddle. He made a sound, something between a cry and a chirp that pierced through Kara's chest like a blade. She knew the mathematics of survival. 1 human life against 7 alien cubs, species that were endangered versus a human who had signed up for the risks of deep space exploration. Her training screamed at her to conserve resources, to prioritize her own survival until rescue arrived. But training hadn't accounted for the way Tern looked at her. It hadn't prepared her for the weight of a dying mother's trust. Kara made her decision. She activated the thermal generator and placed it in the center of the den, adjusting the settings to maximize coverage. The device hummed to life and warm air began to circulate through the small space. The cubs stirred, instinctively pressing closer to the heat source. Next, she gathered what little dried vegetation she could find near the cave entrance. Hardy mountain scrub that grew in the rock crevices. It wasn't much, but it would burn. She arranged the plants carefully, then used her plasma torch to ignite them. The flames caught small at first, then growing steadier. The cubs watched with fascination and fear as the fire crackled. Kara moved slowly, gathering more fuel, feeding the flames until a respectable blaze pushed back the darkness and the cold. She showed the cubs how to stay close but not too close, guiding them with gentle touches until they understood the boundaries of safety. Tern pressed against her leg, his crystalline fur already beginning to thaw. She felt his rapid heartbeat through her thermal suit and knew he was warming up. The other cubs, emboldened by their youngest sibling's courage, crept forward one by one. Soon all 7 were arranged in a semicircle around the fire, their eyes reflecting the dancing flames. Kara checked the den's temperature, rising steadily. The thermal generator combined with the fire would keep them warm through the night, perhaps longer if she could maintain the fuel supply. Then she picked up her pack and moved toward the entrance. Tern made that sound again, the heartbreaking cry chirp, and scrambled after her. Kara knelt down and gently pushed him back toward his siblings. "Stay," she said softly, knowing he wouldn't understand the word but hoping he'd understand the gesture. "Stay warm. Stay safe." The cub resisted, his small claws gripping her suit. For a moment, Kara almost reconsidered. The den was large enough for all of them. She could stay by the fire, could share in the warmth she'd created, but the mathematics were clear. 8 bodies would deplete the oxygen faster. 8 bodies would require more fuel, more heat, more resources. And if something went wrong, if the fire spread or the generator failed, she needed to be conscious and capable of responding. Besides, humans were adaptable. They were stubborn. They were survivors. Kara carefully detached Tern's claws from her suit and placed him back with his siblings. Then she stepped out into the howling wind. The cold hit her immediately, biting through her thermal suit with vicious efficiency. She moved to the side of the cave entrance, finding a small alcove that provided minimal shelter. She activated her suit's emergency thermal layer, good for maybe 6 hours before her body heat alone would have to sustain her. Through the cave opening, she could see the cubs huddled around the fire, could see Tern watching the entrance with worried eyes. But they were warm. They were safe. Kara wrapped her arms around herself and settled in to wait. The rescue beacon was active. Her crew would come. They always did. Humans didn't leave their own behind, and despite everything, despite the cold and the pain and the very real possibility that she wouldn't survive the night, Kara felt something close to peace. She had made a promise to a dying mother. She had chosen compassion over calculation. She had done what humans had always done best. She had looked at impossible odds and said, "Not today." Inside the den, Tern's crying finally stopped. The cubs slept peacefully, their breathing synchronized, their crystalline fur glowing softly in the firelight. Outside, under the frost moon of Kelvar 9, Kara closed her eyes and waited for dawn, the human way.